we'll just dive straight into it. I thought all of us thought it'll be good to first, explain a bit about what VUCA is before we start discussing the ramifications and dimensions of it. Because VUCA itself, the term itself is quite unclear. It's a recent term, but it's been bandied about, tossed about in all sorts of contexts. So it'll be great to have some clarity on what VUCA means. So VUCA has, for those of you who don't know, has its origin, its genesis in the US Army. Quite a few years ago, many years ago, and so very surprisingly, this was not born as a business term. So in the Army College of the U.S. Army, it was created to describe what we've now started owning more and more in the business world. Today, I think it's more applicable and more used, more heard in the business world, and its Army connections are long forgotten. So VUCA is an abbreviation actually. V stands for volatility, U for uncertainty, C for complexity, and A for ambiguity. Well, if you were to take a quick look or hear this quickly, it might all seem to be the same to us, but there are nuances in each of these words, in each of these terms, and there are differences in what each one of them mean. So volatility is very simple. We've always spoken about the stock markets being volatile, right? So right now, what we're saying is that the entire business world, in fact, all the world, in fact, has been volatile for the last few years and increasingly so. So volatility is about the speed of change, very simply put. Change has always been there. Change, death, and taxes have always been constants of life, but change has been becoming more and more rapid in the last decade and increasingly so in the last 2-3 years. So how fast are the changes happening? And are we able to deal with that? Is the question, is the core point about V, that is your volatility. U is uncertainty. Uncertainty is to say, I'm not sure how things are going to pan out. I'm not sure what the outcome of some development is going to be. I'm not sure of what the result of something is going to be. So peeping into the consequence is becoming very difficult. So that's the uncertainty, right? Certainty ka opposite, uncertainty. Complexity. Complexity is about how many actors are there on stage, how many variables or moving parts are there, and what are we talking about? So today with internet, with social media, with artificial intelligence, with remotely connected teams, with so much of connection happening, cross connection across the world, the way in which one development can lead to something else and the complexity of the whole thing has increased than what it was even 5 years ago, definitely 10 years ago. So complexity is the absolute opposite of simple. So is this simple or not? Complexity, the more the factors, the more the moving parts, something becomes complex. And therefore, there is also an information overload. Where there is complexity, you will feel that, oh my God, I'm overwhelmed. That sense of overwhelm is always there. Finally, you have ambiguity. Ambiguity is where there is lack of clarity. It's the opposite of clarity. So it means maybe there is not enough data, not enough information on a particular business scenario or how something is panning out, or maybe there is a clash of data. So there are two data sets, one thing saying the other one pointing in a different direction. So it is not clear. What do you make out of the information at hand? That's ambiguity. Now, each one of them by itself is daunting enough, difficult enough. And when all of them act together, and they are increasingly so in this eternally connected world, it becomes VUCA. Double whammy all of us have to face and deal with. So that's the context, and this is what we're going to be talking about. And with my esteemed panelists, I'm just going to delve into some of these aspects of what VUCA means, and specific to India, what are we seeing in terms of VUCA. So can I request the panelists to start off by talking about, and of course, all of us are sitting bang in the middle of a VUCA development. That's COVID, right? COVID-19. I'm sure that's why this particular topic was chosen for the panel. But before COVID, how was life? Doesn't VUCA have a history? So can I request each of the panelists, maybe you could start with Dhiraj, to just look pre-COVID and say, what was, in your industry, in your company, what was your perspective on and encounters with VUCA? And we'll come to COVID subsequently. Dhiraj.
So thanks a lot, Ganesh, for setting up the context wonderfully. I think explaining, first of all, the term VUCA, which has been around for quite a long time.
Right.
But I think now the larger actually understanding what VUCA means.
Yes, can I just interrupt you, Dhiraj? I think this is, you remember the coastal tidal wave that hit the east coast of India in 2004?
Yeah.
Uske baad, a particular word was introduced into our lexicon, common man's lexicon, which is the tsunami.
Yeah.
So I think this, is the time when VUCA is going to be introduced into our common parlance.
Yes. Correct. So I think I come from the auto industry more than 2 decades. So I would, talk about this industry, as you rightly said, how it was pre-COVID. So I mean, for all the practical purposes, let's narrow down our discussion to this current VUCA thing only, because if I have to talk about other VUCA elements, so I'll slightly give a background. So for instance, like I am in the international business, so I worked with Bajaj Auto for 5-6 years, and now with Hero Motocorp for about 3-4 years. And before that, I was in various roles in the domestic market itself, in the auto industry, in various companies. In terms of export markets, like Iran was one market which was very important for the two-wheeler exporters,
Right.
Bajaj, TVS, Hero. Now, all of a sudden, there is a change of regime, and Trump comes and he says there is sanction. Okay, and unilateral sanction, it was not a UN sanction, but a US sanction. But now all the companies have some exposure to the US. Right. In some way or the other, some alliances, some board member having a US this thing, or some exposure somewhere, some small company, right, some manufacturers. And of course, US is, the world power, and everyone is scared. And all of a sudden, that exports comes to a standstill. Okay. So hence the need for diversification. If we are not present in many markets, then, some crazy stuff like this can happen. So this is all pre-COVID VUCA examples I'm giving. Right. There is a market called Nigeria, which is the largest export market for all the two-wheeler exporters from India. All of a sudden, there is a crude oil crisis. So Nigeria is largely dependent on crude oil. 70% of their forex reserves come through the crude oil exports. And of course, large parts of Africa have these issues around, last mile connectivity, and that is why two-wheeler. I don't know how many of you know that. Maybe a fact which I should share. 90% of the two-wheelers there are used as motor taxi. Right. Which we see here in Goa, or which now the Uber and Ola, etc. are trying to do. Now, so that's the reason the demand has been fueling, because there's high level of unemployment, and there's the issue around last mile connectivity. Most of the countries do not have railways. Most of the countries have these small matador kind of things, some buses here and there. So last mile connectivity, cheap and reliable mode is Okada or Boda Boda, whatever you call. Now, Nigeria being the largest market, where Bajaj and TVS, the Indian three players itself, exported more than 1 million two-wheelers last year. Okay, Nigeria plus 1 or 2 countries, you can say. Now, there's a currency devaluation to the tune of 35%. That has got its implication on the inflation, and that happened because of the crude oil. And now all of a sudden, the industry is dropped, and then again trying to come back. And this happened 3 years back also. Right. There are various such instances of sudden disruptions happening, like the Iran sanction, or Sri Lanka banning three-wheeler imports in a different way, trying to put out some policy which forbids. I mean, it'll create an entry barrier so that the three-wheelers will not come, and then they want to replace it with a four-wheeler or whatever. Right. Now, coming now again to this COVID thing, all of a sudden this hit us, and then nobody knew what to do. And then all of a sudden all the companies were trying to strategize as to how the world will change. Right. One thing which you might have seen, and everyone can correlate, is the two-wheeler industry. I'm just talking about two-wheeler every now and then because I belong to that industry. Sure. And now recently even the car industry has come back, and strongly. What was happening was, there is a very important trend which just got reversed. The trend was, people were leaving their second car, selling off, and saying that, oh, there is an Ola and an Uber, why should I pay for maintenance, and better get rid of this, it's so easy. Right. Now with this COVID disruption all of a sudden coming in, People are, again going back to personal mobility, and that is what is fueling the demand after COVID when the markets have opened up. This two-wheeler sales surge that you have seen. Hero sold 800,000 bikes, 8 lakh bikes in October.
Wow.
And in the period, 35-day period of this Navratra to Diwali, he sold 14 lakh bikes. I mean, it's like record breaking. I mean, we had not thought of this kind of a demand coming back, but it's because personal mobility. People are moving from, commuting into a bus or a metro to owning their own, so that, they are safe.
Yes.
There's one movement, there's one thing which has happened, which I think in the midterm is going to stay. I mean, people are going to be scared with this whole thing, especially after seeing, the kind of fatalities that have happened or the kind of, nuisance this has created. And of course, other thing which I think cuts across all the industries would be this work from home kind of a thing.
Sure.
And this communication, till a year back, I mean, if there is a conference, the webinars were very, very less, 5%, 95% it was seminar or a workshop. You physically go there, and that's how it.
In-person events, face to face, yes.
Yeah, face to face. And now it is all, my teams, we used to travel to all these markets 10 to 15 days in a month. Now, no travel. For the last 8 months, we are just sitting here, in front of the laptop and managing whatever is there with our distributors. Joining in, even the technical trainings are happening online for bike assembly or some new product or whatever. It's completely changed, in these last 7-8 months. I don't know, some of these trends might stay on. Most of the IT companies have said that, okay, I'm letting go of this commercial space. Why do pay so much of rent? For the next 2 years, they've announced work from home, etc. And some of our, panelists who are there from the IT side, they might tell us better. These are the kind of, tectonic shifts which has just happened. And I can talk more about auto, but I think let's go around the table and ask others to.
Thank you. Yes, thanks a lot, Dhiraj. Yes, you're very right. Mathew, what's been your perspective on how this latest example of VUCA, COVID, has hit us, and what is that one? Can you just talk of one significant change, drastic change that you saw in your perspective?
Yeah, so the COVID definitely has impacted everyone and every country, every state, and every industry. It has impacted. The extent of impact varies from industry. For example, the travel and tourism, definitely it has hit heavily.
Right.
Travel, if you are in the airline business, you are gone, right? So the completely it is hit, and then the tourism, especially. Yes. Or Goa or some of the tourists where you have heavy dependence on the tourism and then the hospitality.
That's true.
Are heavily hit, and then the entertainment industry. You take the movie industry, so the movie halls are all closed down, and then the movie production store industry, you are heavily impacted. But at the same time, if you are into the IT industry, we are able to manage that, right? So just like you can connect, you can work digitally, you can commute digitally, and you can work from anywhere. So the only shift who were had 1 lakh people, 2 lakh people going to different offices in different cities.
Yes.
What they had to adopt was to their mode of operation to a distributed system. So they need to establish VPN connectivity and give the facility to the people. And then and then if you are into the cloud business or if you are into internet business, your business is Zoom. Maybe 1 year back nobody knew about Zoom or Microsoft Teams, and I don't know how many times you use.
Hardly at all
in the IT industry, and yeah. So those guys are making it's a big boom. Their business is booming.
Absolutely. Their subscriptions have shot up, yes.
So on which segment of the industry, where you are in, and so that's typically the VUCA situation is that, right? So your environment has changed, the parameters which are going to influence your industry has changed. So it's a reality. So much of whether you are in an industry which is negatively impacted or where you are positively impacted. So, and then be innovative and adapt to the situation and move forward. So that should be the way forward. So even if I was speaking to someone from the tourism industry, so they have a series of chain of resorts are there, an owner of a chain of resorts.
Okay.
So their business, 80% of the business were international travelers.
I see.
So now with the COVID, the last 8 to 10 months, their business is heavily impacted. Now he has moved to local travel. So within different states. So he has come up with different packages and different promotions. So he is reinventing movie industry, the film industry. They started, many of them are started thinking of release or have internet release, movie release, and they are coming up with the cost reduce the cost and produce more.
Yes. In fact, they're also shooting from wherever they are.
So the bottom line is that yeah. So the more innovative solutions are coming.
Yes.
For the industry, if you are in the industry, this is the lesson. So these are all the hard realities of life, which is unpredictable and
absolutely
all these uncertainties and volatility. Be innovative and come out with innovative solutions, path-breaking game strategies, and redirect and reinvent yourself to survive and excel in the market. So that's the bottom line, irrespective of which industry you are here.
Totally agree with you. Yes. Rohith, you will probably have a different perspective, or maybe I'll request you to look at it from your, from the seat where you sit. You head human resources management. So what has been one of the significant changes, if I might term this as your opening remarks. So how did COVID really hit you in the face? And, what are a couple of big things that you faced or grappled with early on before settling down into some new routine?
Sure. Thank you so much, Ganesh. And first of all, thank you for having me on this panel. And I hope everyone is staying safe and healthy to start off. Yes. So Ganesh, I would like to answer that in two aspects.
Right.
So first, I would start off from how we were at pre-COVID levels, because I was tempted to add on to what Dhiraj was saying.
Please.
So, and then probably, Ganesh, if I can highlight the one single thing that has really transformed in the organization.
That's right.
So just to give you a background, probably just continuing where you left, both of you, Ganesh and Dhiraj, I think this concept has been there for almost 3 decades, but it's become relevant in India only in the last decade or so. Yeah. Let's say in India, we have improved our ranking with respect to our ease of doing business across the global competitors. But I think our country, because of the policies and regimes, have always been like VUCA. I mean, it's just that officially we had to announce that as a VUCA. Yeah, it's quite tough for any employee or employer to predict what's coming in their way, whether it is in terms of the taxation policies, financial reforms, GST, and so on and so forth. So I would first of all rate our country and all our countrymen very, very high on our adaptability index to VUCA, because that's how we have been used to as businessmen. So that's the first part.
Yes.
Now, there used to be time when there were players who enjoyed a really numero uno position in their respective industry or sector. There used to be very handful of employers, and people used to say, if I work with them, I mean, it's a real association of pride that I have, till about 2000s. Now, the whole entrepreneurship mindset and the risk appetite has really come out of long way, and thus the competitiveness has just become more and more aggressive. Right. Imagine, Ganesh, I mean, 2014, we recorded a $2 trillion economy, and now in 20 years, which is by 2034, we are going to be 10.34. That's a threefold jump in about 20 years, right? And I'm sure we will be crossing 10.4. It's not even going to hit 10.4, maybe more than that. And that's a winning leap for all. So the organization have shifted from a mindset of a very mere incremental growth to an exponential, growth. That's the mindset they've gone into. Gone are those days where organizations are okay with a like-to-like of single-digit numbers. We are really going into saying that, no, I need an exponential company. And I've seen the new age company, and as well as I've worked with a new age company like a Lenskart and a very traditional and well-established organization like Aditya Birla Group, and now, of course, in the Landmark Group as well. So in short, if I have to just summarize my first piece, which is around that how the Indian business landscape have changed, I would say there are three things which have happened. Number one is we have become, the Indian business landscape itself has become very young, with the new age CEOs and mid 30s and so on and so forth.
Right.
Number two, I will say, is a real digital transformation that is across sectors and players. You can't run away from it. As much you try to run far away from it, it is going to be risky for you.
Correct.
And number three, which is from a human resource perspective, I would say there is a huge paradigm shift in the human mindset, which is what I'm witnessing is changing the pursuing a long-term stabilized career to short-term purposeful stints. And I'm using that word very cautiously, that purposeful stint, because people try to, earlier in banks, people used to retire in banks, right? And now we are seeing that people want to do a certain stint in an organization, do it, and then move on, as long as their purpose is served. I mean, they have larger vision probably with them. So that's the first thing. But yes, now the COVID, the big 5-letter word has stuck. The biggest 4-letter word till then was VUCA, and now it is COVID. So I'm sure that VUCA COVID also along with VUCA will be in our dictionary very soon. And I think we are all lucky to be passing through this, because it has given us so much of immense learning for each of us. I'm sure each of the panel members, not just us, even the students who are going through it, and Ganesh, of course, a veteran like you. Yes. Now, in retail, if I start with, and then I'll quickly move on to the organization, what has happened. The Indian retail is more than 15 million retailers that have 50 million Indians working for, 50 million in the Indians working for the retail. And that means we contribute 40% of India's consumption and 10% of country's GDP. Now, that's how big the retail industry is.
Yes.
Now, COVID has heavily impacted. We have lost to a tune of 3 lakh crore in the first 6 months. Imagine that's the loss we have incurred. So that's the industry perspective. Now, the last part of my first thing is around what has happened to the organization, which you asked me, saying that what specifically have I learned. Trust me, Ganesh, I mean, it's been a fantastic journey, but more importantly, it has allowed us to be more opportunistic, I would say. For example, if I just look at my own organization, we have been known as a very traditional offline hypermarket. SPAR Hypermarkets, the kind of expansion that we have, the number of stores we have. We have always been a 150,000 square foot store, and this is the experience that we want to give. But the COVID has made us really more hybrid, Ganesh. For example, if I just to put in numbers, we used pre-COVID levels, our dependence on online was about 90:10, which means 90% of business from offline and 10% from online. But that has now shifted to 75-25. Of course, the base has changed. I will not comment on the base, but then the base has changed. So in short, I would say a biggest learning from an organization, one key aspect that I have to take out is the adaptability. And adaptability from two angles. One is to meet the changing customer need, and also being very, very available in the market so that you are staying relevant in people who trusted your brand. So that's been the one key learning, which has two aspects in this COVID period.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, Rohit. I think you said it very well, and that's also been there in my mind, which is that India, and in fact all of Southeast Asia, has always been in a VUCA world, right? So culturally, that's how we are wired. And if not for VUCA, the term jugaad would never have come to prominence.
Absolutely.
That's a consequence of living in a VUCA world and the desperation. So therefore, jugaad. So yes, a lot of those things are already there, but like you said, things have been accelerated, and I think they're happening on a larger scale, right? Those are two things that you brought out: the speed of change and the scale of change.
I think we used to read, just to add, Ganesh, sorry, you made a very card. We used to read it in books and documents, but I think it's live there in front of us.
You're now living in the midst of jugaad, huh?
Living in absolutely.
Right. And the other interesting thing that I picked up from what you said, and which I'll come back to later, is you said that people are more, or they prefer to have purposeful stints, even if they are shorter stints in companies, and then keep moving, right? Rather than being stuck in the same place. I'll come back to that. It's a very interesting take.
Sure.
Hanji, Pradeepta. So the question is the same. Could you please just say, how did you walk into COVID? What is just the pre-COVID context for you, your business, your industry? And then how did COVID open your eyes? What happened post-COVID?
Sure. So first of all, thank you, everyone. Thanks for giving the opportunity to share my thoughts around this. So this VUCA world, if I look at, it's not the new concept. It's a pretty old concept here. Now, any external disturbance that happens from business perspective. So like the way COVID has spread across the world, right? So first it becomes uncertain. we don't know what is that exactly.
Correct.
And there is a transition from uncertainty to a risk. So it becomes risk. Now, risk, if it is single risk, multiple risk, if we can make assessment that what are the possible chances of different kinds of risks, then you can make predictions. Right? So uncertainty to risk, risk to predictions, right? So that's how uncertainty. On one hand, it creates noise.
Yes.
On the other hand, it poses unknown risks to almost like in various aspects. Now, businesses, they do forecast. They predict the outcomes. They predict the business, right? So this kind of uncertainty, it throws your forecast out of track.
Right. Absolutely.
Which basically forces people to make either adjustments to the forecast or like all those plan changes you have to do, right? Now, pre-COVID scenario, if you look at, I think I'm coming from the data science and AI ML background. Right. So last 7 years, we are experiencing this VUCA thing because I would say the word data science came into picture December 2012. So when DJ Patil, who was the chief data scientist for Barack Obama government, so he coined this word called data science.
Okay, I see. Okay.
And prior to that, he was heading the data science division in LinkedIn. Right? So, and after that, this rapid development of open source software started. Right? This gives like every day a new software comes into picture. So as a data scientist, every day you have to learn a new language. Language. They started with R, then shifted to Python, then Ruby on Rails, then have so on and so forth. Elasticsearch, MongoDB, Cassandra, Big Data, then have big, so many tools out there.
Yes.
I mean, if you look at the data science stack, like it's almost like 100 tools. A tool one has to learn. So the data science or AI professionals, they're experiencing this VUCA experience like almost last 7 years. Because when you are getting yourself ready by learning a new language, and you go for interview, it turns out to they are looking for the advanced software, which you don't have right now. Right? Correct. So which gives them a continuous a kick, like, okay, you learn more. Every day you have to learn a new software. Every day you have to learn a new library or package. So they're on the run. Right. So from business perspective, yes, of course, if you look at the larger scenario, the data science, more automation, and that is likely to happen because there is a cost pressure always from business perspective. Because pre-COVID scenario, it was different. Now post-COVID scenario, everybody would try to reduce the cost.
Okay, right.
Now, when you are in the pursuit of reducing the cost from different angles, you would like to automate certain pieces. You have to remove the human elements wherever it is possible, and you have to mechanize that. Now, here comes the role of the AI ML making things work for you in an automated fashion, right? So, if you look at even a post-COVID scenario also, many companies, they have already started like in delivery. It started with delivery also. So like they started like no-touch delivery. Right. Yes. So could be drones. We don't have permission here in India, but we could see maybe in couple of years in India also we'll get permissions to deliver products through drones.
I see.
Like more interesting, more automation and more AI implementations on the field.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting. So this delivery by drone is, I don't know if I am looking forward to that or not. I'm in two minds as of now. We're so used to, this human touch and the smiling face and someone coming and delivering stuff. So, I think it's always, there are two sides to any development, right? So, yes. But that's something that cannot be avoided or stopped also, I think. I think the speed with which artificial intelligence applications, use cases are increasing is also tremendous. And I think it's important.
Yes.
Thanks, Pradeepta. For the audience, we'll now move into some, some of the ways, some of the dimensions, a little deep dive into dimension by dimension change that can happen in a VUCA world, taking COVID as an example. So, Dhiraj, I'll just come back to you. I'll throw the ball back to you. I'd like to take sales, cash flow, and business outcomes first. Yeah. And you as the business head of two large regions, you're sitting bang in the middle of it. I think if you don't look at these outcomes, nobody else is going to, right? So they occupy a lot of your time. So how have you adapted and what are the changes that have happened in your way of thinking, way of analyzing, way of workflow in terms of sales? Cash flows dried up completely for at least for the first 3 months after COVID. So sales, cash flows, your sales forecast, and therefore the outcomes that are expected from you as a team. Can you just throw some light on how you grappled with all this and what have you done?
So a very interesting question, and that is something which I think the entire corporate world and especially those having a P&L responsibility were faced with as to what to do. We have planned something, and this whole thing hit us by the time when the financial year was just about to get over. Correct. And all the budgeting was done. Right. The next financial year, and everyone was gearing up for closing of the financial year, and getting into the next one. Now, I think in our country, Prime Minister Mr. Modi, he announced the lockdown from 22nd of March, if I'm not wrong. Right. And I think 2 days earlier, our company had announced from 20th itself. Achha, okay. Once the cases were coming, and all the 6 global manufacturing facilities, 4 here and 2 out of India, Bangladesh and Colombia, they were closed. All the employees were told to work from home and ensure safety, security of the employees, etc. Then once this lockdown started, I think just for a few days, you can say a week or so, we would be just sitting, and then suddenly from our chairman, the message came that start thinking, don't sit idle. So all these Zoom calls, all these Google Meets, they all started. Right. And he started engaging with all these stakeholders. And I think he took the first lead, and he has had, I think, more than 24 town halls till now in the last 8 months. Employees, so many, with distributors, with investors, with domestic dealers, and everyone. Right. And what we started at that time was, a couple of responses. Like, first of all, was business continuity plan. How do we ensure that there's a continuity whenever, a month down the line or 2 months down the line, whenever the lockdown opens? Because what happened was, the entire auto industry is dependent on suppliers. Right. So at suppliers, and also the same situation, dealers. So back end as well as a front end, sales side as well as the supply side. Absolutely. Both were having problems. Now, some of the smaller suppliers had cash crunch. Some of the dealers and distributors, they said, oh, we are carrying so much inventory, so there's inventory cost, this and that. So obviously it was a nightmarish kind of a situation, but that's where, large corporations with their reserves and surplus, they come to the fore. And I'm just talking about our company. So we supported both the suppliers as well as the dealers with whatever financial aids were to be done. And we sewed up this business continuity plan, how to start, and when the plants open up, what kind of security measures, immediately, importing all those safety gears, etc., etc. Ensuring that, certain X 20% or 10% only employees will come to the office if at all it is needed. Correct. Of course, the plant guys have to go, but then again, it was staggered, that there's the social distancing is followed, etc. And obviously all that things happened. And then as a marketeer, we also did one exercise, which is like envisioning the trends. So whenever there is such kind of a disruption, there are always certain trends in the consumer behavior. Some of them are transient, which, after a certain 6 months or a year down the line, they get back. So, a year down the line, touch wood, if all goes well, we will not be wearing masks, after everyone is, ensured that they are vaccinated, etc., then the mask will go off. Otherwise, everyone is wearing. But maybe this personal mobility thing might stay. So we try to put that envisioning hat, and we try to think as to what would be these trends. And once we start doing the business after the lockdowns, how do we, meet those trends, and what kind of an initiatives we can take? do we need some touchless, process mechanism? Do we need some extra features in our products, in our systems? So immediately the digital marketing piece, was expedited. It was all there. Every digital piece was already there, social media and websites and etc. But I think, as someone was also mentioning, the VR, AR, etc. But that a person sitting there, he says that I want to buy this, and how do I compare? All those kind of things have started in some of our markets outside India. We have started such things. Even in India, the digital experience has been enhanced, and the work continues.
Okay.
So these are the kind of changes which happened, and I think in terms of cash flow, one thing which immediately was done was put all the non-necessary expenses to the next financial year. You postpone them. If there was a plant expansion happening, we stopped that. If there was, some new product which was
a new model to be launched, or
etc. got deferred, and non-essentials, so because they know that you never know how long this is going to go on, and we'll have to sustain. So some of the companies, in their knee-jerk reactions, they start doing layoffs, salary cuts, etc. So obviously not a very easy time for any enterprise to tide through this situation.
That's right.
But that's how I think we managed, and by the grace of God, it has all been well. And now with the demand coming back, things are back on track.
Right. So hope things really keep opening up, and the demand starts picking up and becoming robust. At least about 6 months down the line.
Exactly.
Yes, I think a realistic time frame would be about 6 months from, or 8 months from now.
Yes.
But as long as things are still inching along and gradually opening up, I think things are pretty good, relatively speaking. And I think it's a great thing you did, that you've kept people engaged, and you've not laid off people, and you've also supported both ends of the value chain, the front end as well as the back end. I'm just curious to know, what did you tell your customers who are in the pipeline, the prospects who are awaiting order delivery? While they would have understood, obviously, but were there any pressing concerns from any large customers? Were there any sticky customers, any such issues that you had to tackle?
So I can tell you that, this kind of a situation possibly did not happen for our domestic market, but for international market, yes, we did have a very tough time. So what happens is, a distributor already pays in advance, and then the production plan is confirmed. Right. Then it happens, and then it is shipped. It takes a month to 2 months, depending on which part of the world we are talking about. Reaches there, he clears the customs, then he assembles the knockdown units, completely knocked down or semi-knockdown, whatever. Then it's gone, sent to his dealers, and this entire thing is a 3 months process. Now this 3 months became 6 months because of this disruption. Now suddenly, he's paid up the money, so we either refund him or compensate him for the interest, and then there's an institutional buyer. Obviously this problem was exceptional in the sense that this hit us globally. So it's not that there is a demand and there's a customer waiting and the life is normal, and only the problem is here in India that the bikes are not being sent. It was there also, the same thing. Some of the guys, they canceled their orders. They said, we don't know till what time the lockdown is going to be there. And what do I do even if your plant starts? Don't ship it out. I mean, it'll be a problem for me to clear the customs, etc.
Yes.
So this was a tough time, but I think we did compensate at some of the commitments where we had institutional customers, where the delivery got delayed, and because even in lockdowns, the food delivery chains, etc., their orders were there. They were the guys who were there on the field and doing a great job. So some of the orders which were there for such food delivery companies, etc., were delayed. We compensated them in whatever measures. So somehow that phase seems to be getting over now.
Matthew, I just request you to put on wear the hat of a team member of your company, and tell me, from not just the artificial intelligence point, but what were some of the things that you and your company faced in terms of data, in terms of the kind of data that came in, and in terms of the data that you would work with normally? Was there any disruption in that, and therefore in your core role of head of the lab, was there any disruption in that? How did you cope as far as AI and data, all dimensions of data were concerned?
Yeah, there are a couple of challenges we have faced. So we have this data science lab for the bank, and we are operating from Bangalore. So we have this can be connected through a through a remote MPLS line, and we have the secure data. So there are a lot of data security, data privacy challenges are there. So we used to work only from the lab. We cannot take out the lab outside. We cannot take out the data outside. There is a whole lot of privacy, data security, all those things were there. But now with the COVID, we cannot go to office. We cannot go to office and sit in a database. So that's a primary challenge which we face. So we had to go for an alternate option where without work from remotely. So we had to ensure bring in more data privacy measures. Working from home, we had to have a separate mode of. So that took about 2-3.
I see. Okay.
3 months to procedure, and now we are kind of streamlined. So without compromising on the data privacy or guidelines or requirements.
Right.
We are still adapted to this COVID situation, and the team is spread across, working from home, and we are adapted to that. So that's so we have to be a little more innovative here, and we have become different solutions without compromising on the core requirement. So that was a challenge.
Okay. But your regular data flow would have been severely impacted, right? Is that true, or it's not been impacted for you? I'm assuming it would have been for any business, which is why I'm asking. The regular kind of input points, the discrete data that you get, whatever kind of data that you work with, which is necessary. Has there been
is in the
Yes, go on.
Yeah, so big data platform is in the bank in the bank data center itself. So we do not have any problems there. But otherwise, the bank operations, it is in many countries. So the bank operations are impacted because of the downstream industries impacted, and then the loan payments, collection, all those the banking operational transaction, it is impacted definitely. But from a data science point of view, the data availability is not an issue. The only issue was to take care of the to establish the connectivity from Bangalore to our home, or remote connectivity, and then take care of the data privacy, data security with.
Right.
So that was one challenge which we had to resolve that, and right now it is being done.
Okay. Rohith, I'm now moving to you, and this I think is also another extremely critical offshoot of COVID VUCA kind of development, which is what has happened, what have you seen in terms of people working together, collaborating together, coordinating workflows, especially in a condition where they're working from wherever they are, right? In a remote working situation, given the problems of internet bandwidth and all that infrastructure, and people having moved back to small towns, villages, all sorts of places across India. What have you seen, and what have you done to, what have been your observations about workflows, collaboration, coordination, and teams? Have they been able to, how much have they been able to continue working the way before? And some observations on that, please.
Sure. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ganesh, for asking that. Very, very, very relevant to the topic that we're discussing.
Yes, and Ismail, let me just put in one small soft element here, which is still very important. Please. I want to stress on the word collaboration, right? So while we know that there is work from home and remotely spaced out, all of us are in different locations, I would want you to especially comment on the spirit of things, and therefore, what are some of the positive, heartening lessons that you might have learned in terms of teamwork?
Sure, wonderful, wonderful. So, and now that we are really talking about COVID, I think I'll just put the focus on that because that has really changed the ways of working.
Yes, yes.
Gone are those days where people have to leave from their home with their baggages and then go. And normally, I would say, okay, let me start with this. Earlier, we used to say the concept of work-life balance, right? There is work-life balance, which is bad, and we advise our people that don't take work to life and don't take life to work, all those things. But I think the first major shift has happened, Ganesh, is the work-life integration.
Yes,
it is
yes.
impossible that life is part of your work and work is part of your life, right?
Yes.
We have started accepting. So that's number one. The second part, I would say, is a very enhanced level of trust. Pre-COVID, or let's say a few years back, if we were to talk about saying that a lot of transactions, lot of engagements, lot of connections that you're talking about, can we do it without people physically available over there? Do you really trust if someone is saying that I'm working from home? Just few months back, Ganesh, in fact, we are talking about that organizations used to have a limit on how many work from home sessions can you have in a month. Is it 5, is it 10? And beyond that, it is not on duty and so on and so forth. But now, people are having a limitation of how many days you can be in office. So that's the biggest example of how the collaboration has worked.
Yeah.
I would say from a trust factor, I'm going back to that word called trust, because a manager subordinate relationship is primarily on the trust, and so are even the peer-to-peer and so on and so forth.
Yes.
Technology, yes, it has made a big influence in the way people interact, and probably, just like how we started, there were technical issues, is the bandwidth right, and so on and so forth. This is bound to happen, and this is here to stay. We just have to accept and move on. That's the second factor that I would say, that trust and technology have come together and they have had a collaboration, I would say. From a third point of view, I would say people have started getting to know each other more better. Whether it is in terms of their families, I speak and then I've just asked my kids to be inside the room so that the noise doesn't come out. Now, in a normal scenario, if you are in midst of a meeting, people come around, people walk around. So there are people who say hi to the kids, hi to the parents, and say that, okay, let's understand who are they, and so on and so forth. So I think the softer aspect of personalized connections, if I can call it in the right way, not just between the boss and the subordinate, and I'm talking about peer-to-peer, everyone. I think there is a larger appreciation of each other's existence. And I think that's a very, very fundamental shift, because what is happening is, Ganesh, when that kind of thing happens, the people at home are also able to encourage and appreciate what you're doing at work. And people at work are also able to appreciate what are the challenges you have. So I would say these are the three call outs for me, if I've summarized it well, which is on the trust factor, the trust and collaboration factor, the work-life integration, and probably the personalized connect for better collaboration, because you asked me specifically what is that. But all these three put together, come together, and they have made a beautiful joint family of its own. I think that's the biggest takeaway for me.
Right. And one of the offshoots, therefore, the wonderful, heartening things for me has also been that the walls have therefore broken down, right? The walls between employees.
Absolutely.
To a great extent, right? So earlier, I think there was a lot
absolutely. And I think not the literal meaning, but the symbolic meaning of the walls being broken down. I think there is a lot of personal space that has come into the work, and work has come into personal life. So that beautiful integration is something which has really been heartening, and absolutely well said that the walls have been broken. I think that's the right word to use.
Right. And I think, like you said, the borders are blurred, and therefore people are seeing that everybody is able to relate to every other co-team member as, also a person, a father, a son, and in various other personal roles.
I would just replace that word, Ganesh, with your permission. More than relate, I would say it is more of acknowledgement. Acknowledging the fact that what is your ecosystem, whether you're in office or at house, what is your ecosystem, and how does the ecosystem influence your work and life, and work at home and home at work, and vice versa. I think that acknowledgement is one of the biggest word that has come to everyone's mind, saying that this is what is right now happening.
Which has led to a rise in one of my pet themes in the corporate world, in the work world overall, which I think was missing to a large extent earlier. So that is empathy. I think people are also seeing, organizations are seeing slightly or maybe more higher levels of empathy between teams, between people. Right.
No doubt, absolutely. And I think if we have a chance to again, have one more session from me around on the leadership and what has changed in the leadership during this session, I think I would really focus on what the leadership has also changed after we go around the table of what you already have in the mind.
Yes. I'm going to come back to leadership as a specific point. Definitely. Sure. Yeah. So now, what has been the negative, if at all, fallout in terms of the same work-life balance blurring, right? So I'm also seeing a lot of instances where people are being stretched, So the necessity to go to office and come back, at that point of time, at least there was a hard stop saying at 6:37, 7:38, whatever it is, I'm leaving office and I'm going back to home. And by and large, I will not be on call, or, I can kind of relatively switch off. I'm seeing that that's not happening much in many companies, at least. What's your take on that? And that seems to be also putting stress on people and families. I would love if you and Dhiraj both can comment on this.
Sure. So I'll just touch upon to start with maybe a couple of points, and then probably Dhiraj can take it forward. The first and foremost thing I would say is more on, I think most of the organizations have taken, like I was saying, that one of the biggest learning for any organization during this period has been being very opportunistic. So on a negative side, I would say that they've been very opportunistic to be minimalistic. Whether it is in cut down of various costs, look at this. The office spaces are going, the real estate, the commercial real estate space is really tanking because most of the spaces are now, they are cutting down the lease. And when an office goes out, remember that there are a lot of people and the ecosystem around it. For example, the caterers, the Olas and Ubers of the world, everyone get affected. The entire ecosystem with the collaboration just breaks. Everything gets broken. Now, so I would say few organizations, to my knowledge, and we keep interacting with our peers, they're saying that this is the best time for us to be really opportunities to be minimalistic. And once we resume back to normalcy, which is just few months from now, after the vaccines are out and everyone is safe, I think we would have learned by then to be minimalistic and continue to be minimalistic.
Right.
So a flip side from an HR point of view would be saying that the real investments around the scalability, the learning and development, the engagement and so forth has really cut down, which is all a part of what Dhiraj mentioned about the cash flows and so on and so forth, because we really have to be profitable from that sense. So I think that is one point that has really been on the negative side. So people are still missing out that connect with people and then really saying that, okay, this is also another space that I always love to be, and being with people, otherwise morning to evening it is, they used to see, so if you look at 24 hours, if you keep 6 hours of sleep aside or 7 hours, the remaining time was equally divided between the work and office. Now it is all work. It is all home, I would say. Sorry, home and office. Now it's primarily home. And in that you also do a bit of office and the integration that I spoke about. So that is really one thing that has come up. The second is also that because this integration has happened, what is also happening is, Ganesh, that people are not able to respect that personal space. People are not able to cut through saying that what is the starting time and what is the end time.
Yeah, where do I draw the line?
Where do I draw a line? And the second point is, if I know that I have a personal space, then where do I fit in? So you are expected to be there, available on MS Teams. This particular medium is something that we use extensively in my organization and the group. So you are expected to be online throughout, and then saying that if there is a call, then and if something doesn't happen, probably a question around, is WFH, which is working from home, really being effective? Are people being really productive? What I mean to say is, Ganesh, what the shift I am witnessing is very subtle changes, or whether subtle shifts are making strong perceptions in the mind of people. In office space, if someone is used to take a sutta break, for example, if someone just steps out for a smoke, people know he has gone for a smoke and then he'll come back and then continue the work, right? But on a work from home, if you call up someone and then the person doesn't attend, you get jitteries in your mind saying that what is happening with this guy? Why is he not responding? I think that particular shift has been very, very significantly high, which is really not good, for the organization, because one fundamental thing, and I truly believe in this, that trust is the most important factor for any organization to succeed with their people and people to have with the organization, and of course the whole ecosystem. So I think these two are the things that comes to mind starting on.
Thanks a lot. Dhiraj, would you like to add something from your perspective on this, on the negative fallout of in terms of teams?
So obviously all those things which Rohith mentioned on the infringement of the personal space.
That's right.
Is completely, I agree with that part. And but on the positive side, what is happening is that, and many of you would agree that when the meeting starts, punctuality is, something which has improved.
Yeah.
So if there's a meeting at 10 a.m., then you can see that by 1 or 2 minutes, and whoever is not there, they start calling, okay, come online. And then 10 to 11, okay, so 11 it closes. Otherwise, in the office environment, okay, what will you have, coffee or tea? Then the guy comes from the pantry, and then they are saying,
Correct.
okay,
They take
black
orders.
coffee for me, tea for me, and this one for me, and get that biscuit which I like, and then 5 minutes are lost there, etc., etc., and the meeting gets extended. Here, I think now that kind of discipline has somehow come in, which was much needed. Negative side is the infringement. People, putting up calls now till 8:30, 9 sometimes. Even on weekends. Okay, why don't you come for a quick call? And expecting that, okay, he'll come. Where is he going? I mean, not going to the movies, not going to the malls. So that's also not good. You do need space at the weekend to declutter and spend
And
some
refresh. That's refreshing.
Yeah. So that's number one. On the negative side, another thing is for guys like us who are in the sales and marketing piece, or in the business development piece. Now, because of our earlier travels and the visits to the market and the the rapport that we have developed over the years with our distributor partners or other stakeholders, we've been now able to navigate through this. Through these times, through these digital medium, Zoom calls, etc., etc.
Right.
But if this gets prolonged, our travels are completely hampered. I have a large team which travels 15 days, 18 days, to various markets, because you need to understand how the market is moving. Otherwise, very soon, what is happening in the market, you're not. So physical, this thing is a must. Otherwise, robots can replace us. Order comes online and the vehicle goes and the production is all you have. Yes. So we are not in that kind of a business. There's a lot of subjectivity involved, a lot of relationship building.
Judgment is involved, right? Human judgment.
Yes, human touch is involved, and
human
then
judgment, I said.
Judgment, yeah. So all those things are taking a toll now, and I think I don't think that even for the next 3-4 months I see the international travels at least happening.
Right.
But whenever they happen, this is one thing which again will need to be started. Otherwise, there is an issue. There is an issue with our models as well. Especially for companies like us, where the markets are outside and we are trying to develop. We are still in that phase of business development, and where physical presence is required. So to understand what is happening in the market, the dynamics, movement, customer shift, priorities, behavior, etc., etc.
Right.
So that's another piece I want to mention here.
Sure, absolutely right. And I think technology can come in. It's a big factor. It can enable a lot of things, facilitate a lot of things, cut costs in a lot of ways, reduce a lot of flab. Yeah. But in some senses and in some ways, I think feet on the street, nothing can replace that.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, exactly.
So and market intelligence is partly the data technology that can enable data come in, but part of that data is also coming from the live feel, the first-hand flavor that we get from being on the street.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. Excellent. Pradeepta, what is your take on decision making in processes? Yeah, and I don't mean only from a tech perspective or AI perspective, but I just mean as a team member, as possibly a team leader, and as someone who's working cross-functionally in your company. What do you see is happening to decision making processes and workflows?
Decision process. Okay, so decision making, as in with respect to this work from home, or
no. I mean any sort of decisions. I know decisions need to be taken in terms of how do you use the data, how do you business calls need to be taken. Your internal customers, how are they making decisions? I'm saying decisions in terms of regular workflows. That's what I mean. So
I think
how do you see do you see any impact on that and the nature of the decisions, or what's happening?
I think from data side, like data processing, or so there are well set processes predefined.
Right. I see.
That is, I think, it's not going to change.
Okay.
It'll still remain the same. And of course, these policies, they vary from client to client. So different clients, they would have different kind of regulations. They would have different kind of processes, and they would have definitely different kind of set protocols, which is already defined by the client. So this is not going to change due to this. However, what is going to change here maybe from the contribution side, like as an analyst, if I have to work, like how smartly I can work, and of course those things are going to change, right? But process perspective, the way we consume data, the way we take decisions around that, I think that is set. That can't be changed.
Right. All right. So that was a very, very, I think, useful deep dive into some of the critical changes that we've seen along important dimensions of business, thanks to COVID and this VUCA environment. So we saw things that happened, right? The assets. I'd now love to shift the discussion to what should be and what can be, and how can we, as organizations and as team members, gear ourselves better for the VUCA world, right? So the can be, should be kind of thing, looking ahead into the future and seeing where we can make a difference and where we need to gear up really. So next half an hour possibly could be or 45 minutes can be spent on that. And I'm going to take this again dimension by dimension.
And before moving to that, I would just like to add one more thing to the previous discussion.
Sure. Yes.
Like the work from home thing. So what is my experience with that is that we used to commute to office maybe 1.5 hours one way, so which is like 3 hours. So we used to spend on the road. Right. Now we are able to use that. So which is like a common thing in Bangalore kind of scenario, where typically a city where most of 25% of our work time we spend on roads, and we don't do anything actually on that time, right? Which we have seen that tremendous progress in terms of productivity. So people are able to spend more time, and we have seen the productivity has increased and gone up a lot. Second aspect here is and this small breaks. So when they're in the work environment versus at a home environment, they are closer to their near and dear ones, and they take small breaks. And the 5 minutes or 10 minutes break, it boosts the performance, or it boosts their productivity in terms of the deliverables, right? So which is you can say an advantage to each and every organization. That's what we have experienced.
Sure. It also means rapid refresh. Many doses of rapid refresh. 5 minutes of spending time, taking a break for breakfast, and sipping a glass of water, taking a walk, and coming back, stuff like that. I'm also seeing, so interestingly, I'm also seeing that many more people have moved to a better exercise regimen during this time. I don't know if you also picked that up, but many people in my circles, professional, corporate, as well as otherwise, have started at least saying, look, 1.5 hours or 1 hour in the morning and 1 hour, 1.5 hours in the evening, like you said, that time has been freed up. So can I take my morning walk? Can I, if there's a home treadmill or whatever, can I do some yoga? In some sort of way, some way or the other, I'm seeing them put themselves to use better, some wellness regimen.
Yeah.
Great. I think that's a wonderful fallout. I mean, that's a nice outcome. Moving to what should be, I'd love to start with, I think Dhiraj brought out a couple of macroeconomic issues. We just spend a little bit of time there before moving to corporate issues and then delving into those. So as far as Indian business landscape is concerned, how can we, to what extent can we mitigate the effects of this rapid, dizzying change and uncertainty? So we spoke of Make in India. I think this is the right time to talk of that and say, in general, how can we make the Indian business climate more robust? Dhiraj, can you start with that?
Yeah, so I think this is the kind of opportunity which is, absolutely. I mean, there are two sides always to any big crisis. And now for India, we should and we are looking, I think, at this crisis as a big opportunity. Especially talking on the Make in India or the manufacturing front. Now, what has happened is that because of whatever geopolitical changes that have been happening since Trump took over and now after this COVID, all the big economies are trying to de-risk themselves from their over-dependence on China.
Right.
And they are looking at 1+ kind of a manufacturing facility, Apple, Samsung, etc., that, let's have one more. And that's where, India should try to pitch itself and try to give that confidence in the investor community that India is a viable alternative for that. Now, where are the roadblocks? The roadblocks are in terms of, the usual culprits that we had, ease of doing business, where India did improve, and now it's on this 63rd position on the World Bank's recent survey on ease of doing business. Still, the infrastructure issues are, there. It's not one of the best in terms of power, in terms of giving land, procuring land, etc., labor reforms. In terms of our logistics, we are not very efficient. 70% of the dependence is on the road, by the surface logistics, and lesser on the other. This thing where a lot of efficiency needs to be improved. Now, over the last 1 or 2 decades, the surface or whatever the road or highway infrastructure has improved. But I think still what India needs to do is like a very corporate kind of an approach. The government needs to see this and benchmark with the best. Now, how China could do it? Obviously, China has its own issues. It's not a democracy, and there are, that only China could have done that. Suddenly one fine day they take a decision that all the top 30 cities will go electric. No petrol engines, and they go off the road. More than half of their industry is electric.
Yes.
So, but now India is realizing that we are also net importers of oil, and that has a big burden on our whatever balance of payment situation. So they are pushing this electric vehicle thing right now, the government, and which is the right step. However, I think we are late. So that lithium-ion technology, which is needed, the lithium-ion batteries, etc., where again China has taken a lead, some of the other countries have taken a lead, and so this is transition phase which will happen. But I think this is a good step, and government needs to push such steps. So in terms of just putting it out in terms of our kind of a charter, the government should first of all start working on this ease of doing business, where this land reform, labor reform, logistical efficiency, infrastructure issues, clearances, some of the cases pending in the courts. Our court systems are very
lethargic, to put it mildly.
Very lethargic. There was a tax issue of Vodafone, taken years to get cleared, and then again, so there are structural issues which India needs to tackle, and I think steps have started. So like GST was a step, was welcomed by the global investor community. There are other things where implementation of IT. Now it is there in the I'll say, I think my colleagues on the panel can say better, but it needs to go down to the tier 3, tier 4 rural areas. Just to give a simple example that all of us are blessed to be sitting in cities, and by the grace of God managing that. Now for the last 8 months our kids are their education is not impacted. They're all going through this online education, but I can tell you close to 90% of the kids in our country are not getting this.
Absolutely.
Most of them have now a bleak thing of this year going waste. They might have to repeat once this happens,
or just follow the education map, the schooling map.
So this has very clearly come out that digital probably is going to be the driving force for rural education. If digital is good in the villages, then you need not worry about the thing that the guy who's educated, they're not getting teachers in the that's the problem. You go to the villages, there are public health centers that government has put, but none of the MBBS doctors, they want to go into and serve the villages, etc. So why not use digital to our advantage, and at least this basic primary level education where our kids cannot afford maybe a laptop, etc. And I don't think that even a government is in a position to overnight give laptops and put up, but I think a roadmap has to be there after this crisis, which has opened our eyes, that that kind of a thing should be there. So I think manufacturing hub create position India as a all China.
So China, yes.
Roll out a red carpet for all the big corporations, especially US. US has been very critical of Japan, has been very critical of China. And some of the smaller countries have taken a lead. Now Bangladesh and Vietnam. Bangladesh has taken a lead over us on this textile exports front.
Sure.
And Vietnam has taken a lead on this electronics goods, etc. We need to take a cue from them, and I think roll out this as a strategy map. Electric vehicles now, after China, industry going down because of the electric vehicles. In two-wheelers, now India is the largest market in the world. We are the largest industry. I don't know how many people know this.
Right.
And because of this huge domestic base, your cost of production goes down and you are in a better position to export. Exports thrust is something which government needs to work on, provide better impetus to exports, and that's what China has done. Manufacturing exports.
Absolutely.
They go to developing countries and G2G alignment is there, government to government. They give huge credit and they say, we'll build your airport, we'll build your port. Of course, there's a negative side which China has done, that their intentions were not very good. They rejected some of the countries, and they are never able to come out of that debt, and then they use that to their strategic advantage for military base or whatever.
Land acquisition and all the territory acquisition.
But India has been known, image of India is very good on that sense.
Yes.
The trust factor on India is much better. I can talk about all the markets where I've been operating for so many years: Africa, Middle East, South Asia, etc., Latin America. India has to, take that advantage. Now, in the last 4 or 5 years after Modi government, there have been about more than a dozen new high commissions offices which have opened. Otherwise, what will happen earlier is that Nigeria, there is one high commission, and Niger, Chad, Mali, Sudan, 3-4 countries, neighboring, they'll be coming to Nigeria for.
They would be serviced by that commission. Yes.
Then there was no airport connectivity. The flights, it'll be a very complex affair for you to reach all the countries. Direct flights need to start. A direct flight for Air India has been there for ages from New Delhi to New York, which is, I don't know what, 20 hours or maybe more. Then why not a flight if it's your big strategic partner from here to South Africa, or here to Lagos, or here to Kampala, or Cairo. So absolutely. I mean, these are the things where government has to work, and very smartly, and I think future is very bright for the Indian economy.
Yes, I completely agree with you. I think we're sitting bang in the middle of a huge opportunity for real ground change.
Exactly.
And I think pulling a few levers, including infrastructure development, especially in semi-rural towns and small towns, and IT backbone, all of that can be real big enablers. And this the impact of what we're speaking about is not just for a particular industry. It's not just for auto components or auto or anything like that. It's for pharma, it's for education, it's for agriculture, it's for all of that. Yes.
I'll just take 1 minute. In pharma, I missed out, I think. In pharma, API, which is like the kind of a raw material for this, 68% of India's API import is from China. And not just India, even US. Now, after this COVID and their trade war with China, they are now starting to do, API production, etc. And they have reached, unimaginable economies of scale. The kind of cost that China is giving, no one else has. So you are like kind of captive to sourcing from China. But that has to change. Otherwise, your pharma, dependence will always be there. So that's another big place where India has a huge advantage. The cost that we have here in pharma, because of our sheer population, is not there elsewhere. Yeah, please go ahead.
It's very important to not take a country-to-country kind of stance, but I get what you're saying, that rather than looking at, taking something away from China, I think it's a great way to look at just building our competence, building our attractiveness for across the world, for more of the developed countries. Yes, and I think we are well poised to do that. Mathew, I want to ask you, I want to take on this concept of hub. See, for a long time, we've been speaking of India being or possibly trying to be a manufacturing hub. So there have been manufacturing hubs around Gurgaon, around Chennai for a long time. Is it possible to look at India as a data hub for a part of the world or for the entire world? How attractive is that prospect? What are some of the challenges involved there? Can we achieve it? To what extent? Data hub for the world.
Yeah, your voice was breaking, so I could not.
Yeah, I'll repeat that. Your voice is also.
Could you please? Yeah.
Yes, I'm saying how attractive and possible is it for us to make India the data hub for the world, or at least some part of the world? Data, and I mean by data, data, big data, artificial intelligence, all sorts of data dimensions. Can we be a hub for the world?
Yeah, one is data. In terms of IT hub, we can look at that. Then second is IT is an enabler, right? So it doesn't make any sense to think IT in isolation, because IT industry itself is supposed to be an enabler for all the industry. So we should be looking at that. Say for example, the industrial revolution brought in the cities, the manufacturing, and then the job people are leaving village.
Yeah.
Villages and cities, right? So if you are in Bangalore or Chennai or Delhi, you know the how much problem it is creating. In Bangalore, we are in Delhi, you are struggling with pollution, right? So IT is an excellent technology where you can think of moving people to villages, and you can have provide connectivity, and you don't need to come to a city for doing your job.
Yes.
Right. Because of the COVID, in cities like Bangalore, people are all gone to their own villages now. In Bangalore, whenever I'm driving, I can see that the traffic is not there. Otherwise, 10 kilometers we used to take nearly 1 hour to drive.
Yes.
Now, right. So which means the people are gone to the villages and they are working. So what we need to provide is provide the infrastructure. Then you don't need to be talking about hubs or a city where the economic activities for the entire India, entire nation holistically, and that the divide between city and village life. That is right. So now if you want a quality life, the only option is for you to migrate to a city, right, or migrate to a metro. And the village poor and no infrastructure, no job opportunity, no healthcare, no education, that can change, and the technology can help, right? So now with artificial intelligence, the going digital, all this technology, I would look at it from that point of view as an enabler. Right. So you are talking about agriculture, right? So the villages now, the farmers are doing strike in Delhi. Now we are all reading that. So the problem with the farmers is that they produce their agriculture produce. They are not getting the right price. There are middlemen. There are 2-3 middlemen. The wholesaler, the retailer. Then there are the shopping. So all these guys are eating up the profit share. So you can use IT technology, go digital. You can have e-commerce platforms where you can have sell your products. You can sell directly to the end consumer. So for example, if today if I'm buying onion for 40 rupees per kilo, probably getting only 2 rupees kilo, right? So the remaining 38 rupees is eaten by the middlemen and the transportation probably.
That's right.
In per kilo, and the remaining 30 rupees is taken away by the wholesaler and the retailer. Right? So that can change. So the only option is all these retailers and then the selling. So all this technology, the digital technology, all this technology, we should be taking that and applying it on every industry, whether it's a tourism or agriculture. Industry you take, utilize technology to solve the problem. So I would say instead of looking at or a IT hub, and creating pockets of developed pockets across the city, 100 pockets of manufacturing hub or electronic hub or IT hub or healthcare hub. Instead of that, we should look at the whole nation and village, and wherever people may build this infrastructure, utilize this technology to improve their lives.
Right.
Care, job opportunity to every part of the country.
Right.
That should be the way forward.
Right. Right. Pradeepta, your thoughts? Can India be the AI lab for the world, data processing lab?
Sure, yes, of course.
So there are where are we on that?
Right. So there are so many things happening from that side. If you look at recent developments around as a data hub, so there were some startups where they started in the year 2012-14 to 13-14 into medical diagnosis.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. So getting samples or X-ray or CT scan samples based on our population or to identify a particular pattern or disease, we are getting big volumes. Like if you look at one hospital, let's take in Mumbai, probably we are getting maybe 2,000 scans a day, right? But we don't have experienced doctors who can just see the diagnosis and just say that, oh, okay, this is normal, or is there some kind of supervision is required, right? So because of that, there was a long queue, right? Just have to show. Let's take one oncologist has to see the let's take a lung infection or something. Some oncologist has to see that, but you don't have experienced oncologist there, right? So what they solved is basically they trained an AI algorithm to first do a scan and identify any kind of anomalous behavior. If it is, then no need to see the doctor. You can just 8 days, 10 days, right? And if there is an iota of doubt, it should be first investigated. It should get prioritized, right? So that's how they augmented, and in this process itself, they generated huge volumes of data. Now that volume of data, we can literally take it to any other country and use it. When you are learning a particular problem, your algorithm has learned that particular pattern, and right. So you can other countries, and you can go to countries where like Ghana, Nigeria, etc., where you don't have even physicians to see this kind of thing. So your algo has learned certain patterns. There are some more patterns need to be trained. Of course, you have to collect few more samples because based on locality, ethnicity, race, etc., some patterns could change. Right. But the main thing here is we have samples. And we have collected huge samples, and we have built our own database. We have trained our own algo that can be further tuned, right? That's one use case. The other use case, if you look at currently what's happening, if you look at the internet bandwidth or speed, right? So right in the middle of, let's say, Bangalore or Delhi, we are experiencing a speed of like 100 Mbps plus. Or maybe at villages also, people are like, we have seen the smartphone penetrations also across villages. So we can see at least 10 Mbps speed they are available right now, right? And but if we look at other countries, maybe in developed countries also, it's a luxury to get 5 Mbps speed in the US, even in US also. Core hub of San Francisco, probably you can get a better speed. But if you just go towards, let's take Dublin or Tremont or some area, you'll get maximum 2 Mbps speed. Don't get even 5 Mbps speed, it's a luxury, right? And we are experiencing, even on mobile also, we are experiencing more than 10 Mbps speed. So that helps, like during this COVID, especially what people do, they create WhatsApp groups to share. Those farmers, they get fresh vegetables. They have created a WhatsApp group. They just put that, okay, this is today's collection stock. Just let me know. I'll just go and dump these products at your doorstep, right? So physically, there is no need to come to the market to collect vegetables. This has augmented, and people have also very smartly they created the groups and they manage and they coordinate and do stuff in villages. So this makes life pretty much easier for farmers also in villages. Right. So it also helps in the supply chain. It also helps in getting better price for their product. It also saves the product from damage, and it also augments that, right? There are other use cases where some of the startups also they're doing kind of a disease identification in terms of plants, where you can take a high resolution. So all the smartphones we have currently having at least 10 megapixel cameras. So you can take a photograph of the leaves and you can send it to. So if you look at the Indian Institute of Science, so they have a database of around they can identify 1,000+ diseases. There is a database because it's already labeled. So you just have to take that data out, train the model, and get a photograph from somebody. Just identify what kind of disease is this, and that's the standard protocol. If this is infected, go to the nearest pesticide things, right? So these kind of solutions also are taking shape right now. Yes. And of course, with the help of AI, ML, and data. And also, if you look at one step back, it is the digitalization enabler. And also, if you look at smartphones, connectivity, connecting all those together, definitely this is solving certain things in a big way.
Absolutely. Right. Very interesting. Rohith, I want to now talk a little bit about the corporate level, and I want to throw the spotlight on leadership and corporate values. All right. So I'm saying that one of the trickiest things that can happen in the VUCA world in a scenario, and we've seen that, we are seeing it in COVID, is everybody gets a shock, right? It's not like nobody is affected or somebody's less affected than the others in a particular work environment. So how does leadership need to, how do they need to step up? All right. And linked to this, what do they need to do differently? How do they need to change some of the things that they've done earlier? A. B is, I want to talk about corporate values and purpose also in the same breath, because I think it is set out by the leadership. The corporate leadership has a big role in, creating or framing corporate purpose and values. So they practically go hand in hand, So the leaders are the carriers, chief carriers of values and purpose. So how do they communicate this? Do the values, does the purpose also get shaken up a little bit, and to what extent? So can you talk about that?
Sure. Thanks, Ganesh, for that question. So I'll answer this question in two aspects, and I think the values and purpose I believe will get integrated into my into the answer that I'm giving. Perfect. One I would like to talk about the traits of a leader and how things have to change. And the second is how leader need to behave, because trait is one and one is how you behave. It's just like values. The values of the organization, but living the values is completely different, right? So similarly, I think there are certain traits that the leader need to possess,
imbibe and possess, and then some that he needs to demonstrate.
Absolutely, that would not do. So I'll start with the traits first. So I've been reading a lot of articles and all the researches, and in the changing world and the changing circumstances, I'm keeping COVID out of equation. I'm looking at a VUCA particularly, and I'm saying
any kind of VUCA. Yes.
Absolutely. So and VUCA, by the way, it is very defined within the organization by themselves. A certain situation may be a VUCA for them, but not for others. That's another way to look at it, right? Correct. So 4 traits of leaders that I could think of is, number one is compassion, because that's the most important, that you should be very compassionate to your people and understand, how you need to behave, so that you are not just radical in your thoughts, but you're very compassionate about your decision making. So that's number one. Right. The second trait I would call about is very high levels of empathy. And that's the very loosely articulated word I would say for leaders, because they would like to be empathetic about people, but then unless they are not in the shoes of the other person and really understand, and this last 6 months is teaching us the same, saying that how can you be more empathetic and understanding, one side is like Mr. Dhiraj mentioned about the discipline, but the other side is the infringement. So that's all related to the empathy that we are talking about.
Yep.
Third and fourth, Ganesh, are very, very closely interconnected. And one is the third point is on the honesty, and the fourth is on the transparency. So honesty and transparency, I mean, the leaders become credible with the kind of things that they do. I mean, we have read about so many scams. I mean, all these series are going through in all the OTT medias as well, of how things can go wrong. We know enough and more stories. Let's not discuss about that. But then the way that you run the business and the honesty with which you speak, you do, your actions and words define you as a leader and the persona. And you can you can just imagine that your people are just going to follow what you say, what you do. And the fourth is the transparency. And now that is the most important piece, because even if you're compassionate, empathetic, and honesty, and eye on honesty, but then if you're not transparent in the way that you communicate to people and the way that you do your transactions, whether it is business or people, I think there is a lot of threat for losing your credibility as a leader. So these are the 4 key traits that I can think of, which is the need for the new age leaders. Right. Now, moving to the second part, Ganesh, that I was talking about, saying that how do they need to start behaving a little differently from before?
Yes.
Now, one interesting thought that I came across when I was reading few research papers was the fact that there is something called a term vision. You know, and this term visioning is on 2 aspects. One is being very critical, having a very high level of critical thinking for a short term. Okay. And while the long term is all about the strategic thinking. You know, and a lot of organizations, because of the situation they are currently in, are maybe a little bit, you know, one side of thinking, because a lot of people are trying to get back to normal. So they may say, let's just look at today, let's live every day, and let's just look at short-term thinking and making our sales numbers back, or long-term or our profitability back. Right. And there are a few other leaders where they will say, this too shall pass. You know, it's another 3-4 months that we have. And then probably let's look at long term and what the brand that we need to create, and what is that the customers that we need to you know, retain, and so on and so forth. But I think a very able leader, and probably the way that they need to behave, is a very fine balance of short term critical thinking and long term strategic thinking. Because leaders must have defined and definite set of vision for their team, which is what you asked me, saying that values and the purpose and so on and so forth, and for the organization across short, medium, and long. And that again must be communicated to people, saying that, okay, this is what I'm trying to attack right now, but this is the medium and this is the long term that I want to create a brand. So that's number one. The second point that I have in mind is more on the cognitive readiness of the individuals. Now, when I say cognitive readiness, this is more from a preparedness point of view to handle the situations, whether it is tough, complex, and still prevail. You know, the cognitive readiness is not just that you understand, you prepare yourself, but you don't deliver. It is also about you going through it, passing through it, and this really defines how an inspiring you will be for your people. You know, the cognitive, we have heard a lot about cognitive bias, right? And cognitive readiness is equally important, because you need to show that how good you are.
Yes.
The third point that I had in mind, perhaps, which is the last point, that how the leaders must behave, is also to avoid, and this is probably a word of caution that I'll tell my leaders, even in my organization, that avoid searching permanent solutions at this point of time. Because VUCA is teaching us to be all the 4 words, like volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. I mean, all that can happen any point of time. Now, if you are a perfectionist or keep searching for permanent solutions, I would rather say it is always better to have detailing of handful of problems rather than giving solutions to all problems. You know, you'll have to pick. Yeah, I'm not saying I'm not comparing to a jack of all trades and master of none, but I'm trying to say that it's okay to not have a permanent solution to various problems. And I'm not talking operational here. I'm talking at a leadership level, saying that what you're trying to drive for your organization. So I think these are the 4 traits that I mentioned about, and Ganesh, the 3 aspects that if I may just reinforce. One is on the cognitive readiness. The second is the term visioning that I spoke about. And the third is about not searching for permanent solutions, trying to fix a problem, move on, but keep in mind the long-term, medium, and short-term goals, and then behave in the same way so that everyone is together with you and you're not doing a crisis and trying to live every day.
Right. And you're saying, therefore, don't aim to be 100 on 100 on all the issues. Try to just move from today to tomorrow in a very acceptable kind of way, right? And
absolutely, as long as you're able because even if you are 100%, remember the VUCA is going to bite you back.
And you know that 100% might just change. It might just become 0 or 5 tomorrow.
Absolutely. Ganesh, I just want to give you an example. For example, if I just take an example of a telecom industry, for example, you know, X organization, without naming the organization, is going through a lot of troubles with respect to the tax reforms and so on and so forth. While Y organization are not even bothered about what is happening on that space. You know, similarly, from a retail point of view, I can say that there is one particular retail. So let's say I belong to the food and grocery retailer, and my previous experience was into the apparel retailer. Now, apparel retail is going through a completely different complexities as compared to food and grocery, because food and grocery, remember, is a need for you. I mean, you can't live without food and grocery, but when it comes to apparels, you have a choice to make. You know, you can postpone. It is not necessary I have to buy. I mean, I'm sure that Dhiraj and others can also add, because the kind of industries that they work into. So I'm saying that a certain problem can even be for a sector, but not even for the company, because the company may have different things. So I second with you what you just said, that 100% solution, you know, may be a fix to a certain problem, but not a fix to another problem. So, and it can lead to the other. So there is a lot of interlinkage and interconnections that can lead to different ways of how we react to a VUCA world.
Interesting. Dhiraj, so in a situation like this, when leaders have to behave differently and demonstrate certain other things, step up, you know, is it possible for them to, so what happens to corporate purpose and values, A? How much of a jar does that take? What does VUCA readiness mean in terms of being ready, in terms of how solid your vision and your values are, right? So how much of a jar can it accommodate, can it not accommodate? That's one part. The other part is clarity of communication from leaders. So just, you know, continuing from what Rohith said, I think in a situation, in a VUCA situation, leaders have to be extra clear about driving certain messages across, right? So may I have your take on these two, please?
Yeah, so first of all, I would like to thank Rohith for that brilliant piece which he said about this leadership and the various facets he touched upon. I think he said it all, but just to add on and touching upon the points which you just mentioned, I think communication with not just your employees, but all your stakeholders, which are your pillars of your business, is the single most important thing during a crisis. You know, if you are not communicating, that sends out many signals. You know,
correct.
A person thinks he's not bothered, the company is not bothered. When the going was good, they were talking to us. When the going is bad, they're not talking, they're not listening. You know, half of the problem is solved when you just listen to the problem.
True.
We listen to the guy, you know, and they also sometimes understand that there's not much that you know, the elder brother can do. So for the suppliers, for the dealers, the company is like an elder brother.
The elder
right?
brother, yes.
Yeah, that's the brand they have also nurtured, and the brand has also taken care of them. It's like a win-win. It's like a family kind of a thing, which is one thing where some organizations like mine have done a brilliant job. And as I was mentioning, every now and then, even Diwali, Baisakhi, this, that, whatever, we celebrate online. And when you speak to them, then they get this assurance. And of course, there was an Airtel ad, no, baat karne se hi baat banti hai. So that's so true. When you talk, you will get to know something. You know, what is the issue? What is bothering you? Okay, let me see what we can do. And this crisis, Ganesh, has also shown some of the real face of some of the companies, you know, who used to say they are very employee friendly, very this, very that, we are very ethical and corporate governance and all those jargons which are found, in the world. But it just took 3 months of disruption
for all this to fly out of the window, huh?
A company I would not name in the automobile sector, which is sitting with a 22,000 crores of reserves and surplus. EBITDA margins used to vary in the range of 20% plus.
Wow.
Unheard of. While not named, you'll get to know. You Google and you'll find out. And 2 months of disruption, 3 months of disruption, and bloody that 22,000 crores came to nothing. And they went from everything from sacking employees to cutting their salaries to whatnot. And communication, no communication, nothing. Okay, work from home is fine. I need this, I need that. And as soon as the earliest this thing happened, they forced people to start coming to office irrespective of this. And I mean, that's an example of bad leadership. I think you all can guess who I'm talking about.
So the VUCA scenario really puts leadership to the test.
Yes, and that's where, all the good companies like, Tata Motors, like ours, so many other companies who stood with their employees, with their suppliers, with their investors, with dealers, distributors everywhere, and took care of them. And that's what enterprise is meant to be, right?
Absolutely.
It's a very long-term thing and not a short-term thing. I mean, and Some of these startups you can still say fine because they were still trying to get their feet on the ground, you know. So if this kind of a disruption comes, they have no option. I mean, they can say that after 3 months I'm not, or 6 months I'm not in a position to pay your salaries or whatever, you know. But for large organizations, this is a time to show that you value your people, your stakeholders, and when the time comes back, they are going to reward you, and that's all it is all about. You know, it's not a one-way street. So I think leadership is about walking the talk, about being, you know, true, and this is what leadership integrity is. You know, that you whatever values you write in your annual report, or
you actually live them. You
at your reception on the vision and mission statement or whatnot. I mean, you just try to live up to that, and that's about it. You don't have to say too many things. So I think that's the only thing I want to say here.
Lovely. I think that was a beautiful piece. So this dimension is so important. So maybe the most critical, and I think we all wanted the audience to take that back. You know, saying mission, vision, purpose of padhte hain, we learn about all that, but they're not just words on the wall. You know, not meant to be just framed and put up beautifully in conference rooms, etc. But there are many situations, and today, because we are saying VUCA, I think these situations are coming far more often. Earlier, they used to come once in a decade, once in 5 years and all that. But COVID is not the only example of VUCA. So we've seen Brexit, we've seen Trump. Dhiraj has spoken about how China is affected, Middle East and Africa. One thing affects something else. You know, if you've heard of the butterfly effect, I don't know how many of you know that. The butterfly effect says that very simply, a butterfly in one corner of the world, you know, flaps its wings, and there is an earthquake or a tsunami somewhere else in another corner of the world. So that domino effect or the butterfly effect is increasingly common today. So vision, mission, the values that you talk of have to be espoused, have to be lived day in and day out. And there's nothing like a VUCA environment to test that, to put that to the test. I think companies that come out with not necessarily flying colors, I don't think this is a test in any sense or a competition, but companies that do it with heart, you know, do it with the right spirit, I think they come out shining, you know, with flying colors. Whereas there are other companies where the intention itself is at fault or is at doubt, I think they really falter. I think they really come out in a poor light. I think that's been the critical message from this piece.
Ganesh, just to add on, if I may, less than about 60-90 seconds. Look, we talk about the VUCA world, and that is, you know, we talk it in a way that it is off-the-shelf product. You know, it is available there, and then we live in that. But the most critical piece, what we just discussed about the leadership, and like Mr. Dhiraj just added, saying that, you know, the various aspects of leadership. A lot of times, the VUCA is created internally because of circumstances. You know, you make a certain situation a VUCA type. You know, you make it, you know, volatile, make it uncertain. So there is also intra VUCA and you know, inter VUCA and intra VUCA. You know, you may want to call that ways, because if you're and why I'm linking this to leadership is, a leader really makes the situation ambiguous one or an unambiguous one. Remember that. So of course. All these four aspects, if you look at from that angle, there is a lot of role that the organization, the value, mission, purpose, and also the leaders play in making a certain situation sail through that particular VUCA period. You know, just wanted to add on to that, saying that it is not just out there, it is also at times created by self.
Created internally, by the company. Absolutely.
I agree with you.
Right. So in that sense, Rohith, I think one of the key traits of a leader is always, not just in VUCA times, but in other times also, to be simple and straightforward, right? So how much can you simplify for your team members? Simplifying to the extent possible a certain format, decision-making framework, etc. Would you not agree that that's also critical, key, especially in complex environments?
I relate to what you said in the beginning, that opposite of simplified is complexity, and that C is nothing but VUCA. Right. So, I mean, the more transparent you are, and you know, Dhiraj also added to the point that I mentioned about the 4 traits about empathetic, compassionate, honest, and, you know, all these things. As much as you can, I mean, the more you are, you know, of course, you will have your certain boundaries because of your levels in the organization, the hierarchy in the organization. You know, yesterday, I was having a discussion with one of my colleagues, and he was saying, in one of the countries, in one of the Western world countries, you know, because of this right to equal information, what is happening is, if an MD of a company walks out with a frowning face, the employee who's sitting outside can even sue the particular MD or CEO, because there is no ways that he can know something better than what I don't know. To that extent, I mean, we are very, very far off. I mean, we have a complete pyramid, and there are certain only percentage of information that gets moved on to the others. But imagine that kind of culture wherein people are saying that an employee can sack if my MD or a CEO can know more than me, and if he comes out with a frowning face. That's the only word. Imagine the frowning face. That's it. There are companies which have one of the retailers sacked their CEO just because they use someone else's loyalty points or credit points while he or she was shopping. Imagine. So there are enough of examples where you say so, but I would say that I wouldn't say they have to be absolutely 100%.
That's right. I agree with you.
Go the funnel, because they also have to answer the investors, board, and so on and so forth. But the more you are, I mean, the kind of transparency that you show, I think your employees, most importantly, they are going to return that to you. Correct, so if you are at 50%, remember, they are going to be 50% to you. If you are at 80%, they are going to be 80% to you.
I want to now flip the lens, and I'm going to start move to Pradeepta, and say, we've spoken about what it means for leaders and for the people who set and drive the vision, right? What does it mean for employees, for team members, and irrespective of the industry? What are some of the things that employees need to do, and how do they need to equip themselves better, knowing that day in and day out it's going to be VUCA boss. There is no VUCA climate and VUCA separate face, etc. By and large, we're living in a VUCA world practically all the time.
Right.
So yeah, and there are many other changes that are happening in terms of startups coming up, mushrooming across industries. The gig economy has exploded all over. Skills are getting obsolete in in just a couple of years, or maybe less than a decade at least. So it has already been there. The context has been set for us, right? We were not. It's not just because of COVID. So my question to you is, how do team members, how do employees need to gear themselves up and strengthen themselves, make themselves more resilient and robust?
Right. So so from employee standpoint, I think learning and development and upskilling themselves has been one of the important trend that we can see during last 5-6 months. The demand for online courses has gone up maybe 200%, and that's what happened. And even including the experienced IT folks, and also people who are in their final years also. So because now they are getting a chance to learn things online, and they are also interacting with industry people from the industry as well, and they know exactly like what it takes to hit a particular domain. So let's take somebody is in software engineering, right? So engineers are more responsible for training a software or building smart systems or expert systems. So how do they do it? So they do by doing various kinds of if-then rules or conditions, or how to program it, something like that, right? So people who are final years, they are getting a chance to, and of course they are getting more time because there is no physical classroom and they're not going to the colleges also. So they're getting ample time, right? And they're spending those time in upskilling themselves, getting themselves ready to get once the COVID things is gone, or out of so they can just start working. Right. So from employees' standpoint, definitely they have more time. They are investing those time mostly in upskilling themselves, learning new skill sets, and doing practice also on existing skill sets, so that they can stay in. I mean, it's going to be extremely difficult, tough for them also to retain to their positions also, because somebody else is better skilled to replace them as well. So I mean, competition would be like mainstream in next couple of months.
Right.
And from leadership perspective, one thing I would expect is like, I mean, leaders need to be more flexible and having more trust on employees. So we see people, but we need to develop the trust that okay, they are working 9 hours or 10 hours, they are working, right? So I mean, that kind of trust and confidence, and also like regular touch basis to understand how it's happening, how things are going at their end, all is well, like all kinds of like a regular touch up also, it boosts moral and confidence as well.
And gives the employees some kind of assurance, right?
Yes, absolutely.
On the attitudinal part, right? We spoke about skilling, right? So being abreast of skills and therefore making sure that you're kind of prepared to do your job and then, staying ahead of the curve. But in terms of traits, character, personality, what shifts do you think an employee needs to be geared up for? Because I think that's the other important piece of organizational performance and growth, etc. Right? It's not just the skill. So, what are you seeing there? What is your take?
Yeah, from attitude side, yes, we have seen like people who are quite like having a strong more and more, and people who are capable also, they're trying to learn. So their attitude is quite positive nowadays because everybody wants to be employed after this COVID, right? So everybody would expect at least to have a job. Now to have a job, what it takes to be, right? What it takes, shall I build new skill sets or shall I do something different? So the attitude is now completely changed because opportunities will be like not many, less, but supply side you will get more folks to take up those jobs. So it will be extremely competitive in next couple of months.
Right.
Attitude is definitely going to be positive, and people are also taking it in a positive way to get their right mindset in doing things. Can tell me where is the box, right? Somebody has to tell you the box, then you can think out of the box. So here it is completely VUCA world uncertainty, right? So we don't know where is the horizon and where is the environment. We don't know. If we know the horizon, at least we can prepare for a fight, right? Exactly. You need to know the actors with whom you are going to fight, right? So that's why it is slightly different. Yeah.
The last couple of points I want to discuss is I want to just throw this to Mathew. How can predictive AI help us, Mathew? You of all people, your domain, I think is the most competent to say, can I look at arbit pieces of data, discrete pieces of data and say, can I give you some sort of prediction or sense of the future? Where are we on that? How can predictive AI help?
Yeah, so in this VUCA world, especially with the post-COVID and becoming lean and then strategizing, changing the strategy with the changing dynamics, all this. So as long as you data about the market, about the customer behavior, purchase behavior, market sentiment, all this data you can predict. So that's what we are already doing. So what we should be doing is manage your decisions, manage your strategies using artificial intelligence. So you predict your customer and predict the competition. So as long as the challenge is how much you can get the digital data. So if you can get how your business is digital and if your customer, if you can capture all those data, you can predict with that, and irrespective of your industries, a traditional conventional industry like automobile or steel or manufacturing, agriculture, any industry. So we should be adopting the strategy. We can come out with game-changing strategies, and we can manage our decisions. About where need to be optimized, where the cost cutting should be there, where you should not be doing that. So identify which are the product areas where your business is doing well. You focus your spending there, and if your marketing campaign, sales, you predict, and then if you think a certain area whether your business is going to go down, either you cut down the business there or you reduce the cost. So all these decisions can be managed using artificial intelligence. So it's time. So I would take this COVID as a opportunity for businesses to go digital and adopt all the new technologies like cloud, IoT, AI, machine learning. Every industry segment, this is an opportunity because we are forced to do that. So take that opportunity, adopt into your business to drive your business and go forward. So that's the future.